Welcome to the Best There Ever Was, the pro wrestling podcast. We talk about the art form that is pro wrestling and the emotional connection that keeps us coming back. As always, I'm Chris.
I'm Pax.
And we are the Curtain Jerks. And on this season of the Best There Ever Was, well, it's not really a season. It's just this thing we're doing where we're talking about New Japan every week on Facebook and YouTube. So
we're live.
We're live, and it's been it was an interesting week. It's interesting, I think, when you have these big, long tournament tours,
right,
that New Japan does, because you have those initial early stages of them, lots and lots of shows, and then finally you get to that end, that climax, a G1 climax in some cases. But you get to that end, and it's a sort of interesting thing where your quantity of New Japan goes down. We only had 2 shows this week as opposed to 3, 4, 5 to talk about. But at the same time, they all had big, important moments. And one of the things I like about New Japan is that ebb and flow, right? There's quieter shows and then big shows that matter more.
Yeah, and I think this week was particularly weird because you went from that downshift, again, from a quantity standpoint, upshift and a quality standpoint, and then you had this weird just left turn that was the Super J Cup, too,
right?
Which is in the United States. There's no audience. And just kind of a weird show, and I know we'll talk about that as well. But those are obviously the 2 things that are worth talking about. You know, we had our World Tag League final. We had a much bigger undercard than we're used to seeing. We had our Super Junior final. We have a pretty darn good idea with the Wrestle Kingdom card. There still looks like there might be some open space for a couple more things to be added. But we have a pretty good understanding of what we're going to see January 4th and January 5th. And yeah, where do you want to do? Should we just start with?
Well, yeah, let's start. I mean, with the best of Super Junior World Tag League final show. So the undercard, I wouldn't say there was anything super exciting on there, but
no.
As Ghetto is wont to do on shows like this, very, very efficiently use the undercard to set up the rest of the Wrestle Kingdom show, setting up the last kind of little bits and pieces that were needed to get everything into place. The big one, right. And I don't want to spend too long on this because we'll preview Wrestle Kingdom in a couple weeks, but Hiroshi Tanahashi is going to wrestle the Great O'Karn.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this more, but I can't remember since you and I started watching the January 4th show on January 4th, or January 5th. I don't remember a match that going in had such clear hot poker potential, let alone with one of the all-time greats. Like, it is vexing to me.
If Tanahashi can get something out of this guy,
a star. If he can get a star,
he's one of the all-time great workers, and I mean, we already know that, but he might literally be a miracle worker if that's the case.
Yeah,
Mother Teresa Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said last week, Great O'Karn's the worst I ever remember seeing in the modern era of New Japan. Hey, maybe they're working this out. And again, there's going to be a crowd of 20,000 there. People love Tanahashi. Honestly, it's one of those weird things that maybe the lights and the glitz of Wrestle Kingdom actually can bring out some magic here. Tanahashi. If you found out if Chris and Fax from the future, the far future of like January 7th came to you and were like, it was actually a really good match that we really liked, like, we wouldn't be super shocked to Hiroshi Tanahashi,
Yeah. They also set up Shingo defending the Never title against Jeff Cobb, which should be good.
So we thought they were good, because they really fortified that, right? We kind of thought it was going in that direction. I definitely feel like there's better potential options on the table for Shingo, but I'm definitely excited for that match. I mean, that's going to be a good match. Depends how long they get, but if they get some time, it should be good.
And it's one that hadn't been done as frequently. I feel like the better options on the table were probably Shingo against, you say, Suzuki, Shingo against Ishii, but they've done those matches a couple times. Cobb, they did work in the G1 once, but we do. It's fresh. Goto. It's a little bit fresher. They haven't had a big match against each other.
Goto, though, feels like he's kind of at that same level of a guy looking for something to do Wrestle Kingdom. I don't really remember too much with him and Shingo. Again, it's not the most exciting match. I'm not sure. I'm much more excited about Goto than Jeff Cobb. So fine, whatever.
Yeah, they also set up Evil and Sonata, which I think we were all expecting that was going to be their showdown at Wrestle Kingdom.
It really was just
get out of the way.
Well, and it also was, is it going to be a singles match or is it going to be kind of like a stables match? So it really looks like it's a singles, or now we know it's a singles match.
Right.
They officially announced it. So, again, hopefully they'll just nip that one in the bud. We never have to see it again.
Well, then, of course, we had the two finals. First up, the World Tag League final.
And let's also, because there's one other thing. You and I both thought it was going to be a Wrestle Kingdom match. The way they had set it up was the King of Pro Wrestling with Yano and Fale in a body slam match. Which is like no buys. But then thankfully we were saved in case the audience is confused, because that's King of Pro Wrestling 2020.
Right.
And it will be 2021 on January 4th.
Different year.
Different things. So that'll be on. So that match is happening, but it's happening on one of the Korakuen shows leading up to a Road 2 show. I assume at Korakuen.
It's I do want to point out, it's not even main eventing that show. It's third. It's right before intermission.
But so if you think about it, small show, it's on third. If they sold even 5 more tickets because of that match, Guido did a good job.
I don't know if they sold 5 more, but it'll be fun. I mean, it's Yano. It's not in the Dome. I think we were all a little bit worried about, like, what's a Yano Fale match in the Dome going to look like? At Korakuen, they'll have fun with it. It'll be Yano. It'll be what it is.
And then just before we get into the finals, which we'll spend most of the time on, is, again, there is still seemingly, and we'll obviously cover Wrestle Kingdom more leading up to the 4th, but there does seem like this might be it. We might have the final card. It wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world. Presumably there'll be some kind of gauntlet added or a rumble added or something like that. But we got to find out. Doki and Hanare, so far not on the card. In addition to Ishii, Suzuki, and Goto, but Doki right there with them. Got to find out what those guys are doing.
Well, there is one match that has not been. Master Wato. There was one match that hasn't been announced yet that looks very likely. That came out of that World Tag League final match. God against Finjuice was the final. Good match. It was. I think I texted you. I was like, "This match is exactly what you would expect it to be. It's not better. It's not worse. It's what you expected it to be."
Well,
I enjoyed it.
I think, though, especially knowing your thoughts on GOD's tournament, I actually took that to mean, this is going to be – so that actually lowered my expectations.
Okay.
So I actually thought this was kind of fine. Like, again, I thought it was actually kind of pretty decent, pretty good. It wasn't one of the best World Tag League matches of the tournament, but the finish was not straight up, which bugs me. But it was fine. It was a good, solid match.
Yeah. But the finish, of course, involved Kenta popping out from nowhere. Surprising, because it seemed like maybe he was in America. Popping out.
And he was in America the next night, right?
Yeah.
Right, on tape delay.
Who knows? But it's magic. It's totally magic. He's flying around. Kenta's the only guy flying around the world right now. Like world leaders aren't doing it, but Kenta's doing it.
He'll just knee COVID in the face.
But he comes out, he hits Juice Robinson with the U.S. title briefcase. Presumably that leads to God winning the match. Presumably it sets up Juice against Kenta at the Dome. Again, another match that I think will be good. Kind of clearly a replacement for whatever would have actually been a U.S. title match at the Dome involving Mob. But I think that'll be a good one as well.
And I think in retrospect, that's kind of the finish we should have suspected, because God didn't really have an obvious other thing to do. They did kind of, and they actually do set up a nice little story here, right? That God finally gets the World Tag League monkey off their back. They finally win this tournament. And now people have been talking about this Wrestle Kingdom futility, that they lose. They keep losing to the World Tag League winner every year at Wrestle Kingdom. And now we have Techers coming into presumably as baby faces in the Dome. Right. They could play it strict heel versus heel, but in Japan, the audience is going to pick a side, even if you play it heel versus heel. They're clearly, I can imagine that 20,000 people when Taichi rips the pants off. I mean, they're going crazy. And again, with Finjuice, Juice is a guy that's already been built up enough in the heavyweight division that you can kind of plug him into another match pretty easily, as they're doing here with Kenta. I think you and I kind of thought we always had Juice kind of penciled in with Kenta if the Moxley thing wasn't going to be a go. And, it sucks for Finlay that now he doesn't have a spot on the card, but, I don't know. He'll probably be in a 6-man somewhere or something like that. I'm sure he's in the country.
Well, we presume he's not on the Korakuen shows, interestingly enough, the Road 2 shows. Maybe he went home. Maybe he just wants to hang out with his family. But he'd also be, again, on some kind of gauntlet thing. So we'll see on that regard.
But GOD more than Finlay, they weren't flying GOD to Japan to not have a big Wrestle Kingdom match, presumably.
Right. It does feel, to me, my concern on that match is that it kind of undersells Techers. I think they built them up so much as heels that to send them into the Dome in a heel versus heel match seems weird. But
but I think with Suzuki himself kind of becoming like more of an elder statesman by the year, particularly in like the last year and a half, 2 years, which kind of just turns you organically face, like all the old timers are faces. Doki is a sensation. People want to
Doki.
Yeah, like they might just be pulling the trigger here because obviously the Techers are the focus of Suzuki-gun, right? Maybe they're going to just turn that whole stable face. I don't know, because now you've got Ospreay's stable, their heels, Bullet Club are the heeliest of the heels. I don't know, maybe you let Suzuki-gun just kind of go for it.
Well, and I think that actually transitions us nicely to the finals of the Best of the Super Junior. Another Suzuki-gun member got quite the positive reaction in this one. Desperado. What I thought was a really good match against Hiromu that I just never quite thought Hiromu was going to win.
The one earlier in the tournament, or are you saying this one?
Well, this main event, the main event here.
Oh, yeah.
The earlier in the tournament, Desperado won, which I think made sense in context. It's a tournament match. In the finals, it really felt like it's kind of got to be Hiromu here. We're talking about going to the Dome. On the other hand, though, Desperado acquitted himself very, very well. And with that that moment where Hiromu tears his mask and Desperado just takes the rest of it off and says, I'm not going to let this hinder me. That got a giant reaction, probably one of the biggest reactions of the year because of COVID, right? People have reactions.
Yeah, you watch that little bit and really the rest of the match from that point on, there is no way you could tell that's a COVID crowd. There is no way. They are an amped New Japan Wrestling big show crowd. And in retrospect, I think that this was kind of perfect because there is literally no one against Hiromu that has any chance. There is a 0% chance of anyone other than Hiromu winning this tournament unless Hiromu has a catastrophic injury. And even then, they would have to be 100% certain he couldn't work the Dome. So I think they ended up making this that you could have made Show, but I think there's going to be bigger spotlight matches for Show. They really kind of made Despy here in a way that we've never seen him. He's never been as interesting to me.
Great.
In person. He's never been as interesting. I don't know, Chris, do you watch The Mandalorian, by the way?
I do not.
Star Wars show. That it's just an interesting synergy. Anyone watching this that watches New Japan and then watched the episode that same day of The Mandalorian where they've been doing the whole
Desperados like Sasha Banks?
What was that?
Desperados like Sasha Banks?
No, Desperado is The Mandalorian. Hiromu is Sasha Banks.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But very interesting about it's all about culture of coming from two cultures of mask-wearing people. Because apparently Despy is, I don't think in real life, but in canon, he's half Mexican, I believe. That's the story. When do you forego your mask? And when is it on? Literally, the two biggest pieces of pop culture, The Mandalorian and New Japan Best of Super Juniors final, both kind of making it. And I'm not going to lie, after the unmasking, there is part of me. I still never thought Hiromu was going to lose, but that made me at least slightly question it to a slight degree that I don't think there's anybody else could have done that. Even if it was Show and they were having a 5-star classic, I don't think I would have ever bought Show was going to win it.
Yeah, but and to your point, though, about Suzuki-gun's sort of role going forward, a guy comes out like that, shows that much fighting spirit, it's kind of hard for him to get booed all the way next time. I think when he comes out, he's getting some cheers probably from people who appreciate him. You know,
and do we think next time he comes out with or without the mask?
That's going to be a very interesting question.
Good looking guy.
Very handsome man. I'm actually curious.
I was surprised. I was actually kind of like, ooh, why does that hunk of man wearing a mask?
It's always a great question. Just because you're beautiful doesn't mean you can't.
But they're going to be showing clips of this match for years. I mean, this is undeniably the New Japan moment of 2020, at least post Wrestle Kingdom, certainly post pandemic. This is the defining moment of all of New Japan wrestling, probably of all pro wrestling. I can't think of a bigger moment. Kenny Omega, running out with the AEW belt might be remembered, but in a different thing. This is a pure wrestling fighting spirit. What New Japan is all about. I mean, this was I would say just shy of a masterpiece. This match, I think it was a really good match. It was not a masterpiece, but I think it was one of the best matches we've seen also since the quarantine, on top of the drama.
Well, and I think pushed a lot higher by the crowd, pushed higher by the fact that there's, good. I don't think this was a better match, say, than the Bucks against the FTR, for example, or even, Stadium Stampede's hard to pair it to, right. But just some of the real classics AEW has had. But at the same time, those matches were not driven by the real response of a crowd that really took it to a different level. It was nice to see that again. I know it's something you're kind of excited about for Wrestle Kingdom.
I really am, because now the 20,000 is just going to feel, because again, 20,000 is a lot of people. I was watching Wrestling Kingdom 7 the other day, and Wrestle Kingdom 7 only had about 35,000 people there anyway. And that's one of the great Wrestle Kingdoms of all time. And I'm telling you, watching it, and now granted, they're probably clustered closer together. They're not going to be all spread out, but you can't tell. It feels like a Wrestle Kingdom crowd. And I think the 20,000 each night is going to feel like a Wrestle Kingdom crowd. And I'm really pumped. And tell you what, by the way, as we're going to transition into Super J, you know what? I'm going to already walk back on something I said earlier on. The junior heavyweight division singles, not looking so shallow anymore, right? We've got Hiromu, we've got Ishimori. They've really made show. We've got Maskless Despy, who I feel like you can plug in for another title shot next year. Yeah. We've got now ELP. We've got
ELP's back.
We have ACH. They didn't outright say his signed a New Japan contract or anything, but the way they were talking about him on Super J, really, it sounds like ACH might become a regular in Japan next year. And even, again, Robbie Eagles has been emerging. Even Wato, not anywhere near the other guys, but definitely had the end of his tournament was really something to build on. All of a sudden, it feels like, who cares, that Kushida's not here? Who cares that Will Ospreay's not here? I mean, obviously we care. Those guys are great. But they actually kind of suddenly built up in this tournament and this last night. They really have built this division up.
Well, I think it's interesting because the Super J Cup, I thought was an interesting experience because very quickly, I think, one of the hooks of the J Cup was the number of people who were kind of making their either New Japan debuts, re-debuts, or sort of big tournament debuts, right? ACH had been there before, but, and had been doing New Japan Strong, but obviously this was a big moment coming back. Same with TJP. He'd been doing a bunch of stuff, but this is kind of a big moment for him. Leo Rush, Chris Bay, a Blake Christian, again, who'd been doing New Japan Strong, but was doing a tournament here for the first time. Very exciting. But to me, there was a part where it felt lacking without the crowd, because in part, I think the interesting and the joy of this, you always talk about the experience seeing Flip Gordon wrestle in front of the Japanese crowd for the first time. And
against ACH, by the way.
Against ACH, right.
It was the first time they'd seen Flip Gordon. They didn't know ACH super well, but they knew. And they went apeshit. And also the one-night tournament thing, too. That's part of the appeal, is the one-night tournament, that energy of the crowd thing you can get going, too. Like, when you think of Macho Man winning at WrestleMania 4, those matches weren't all tremendous or anything.
No.
But there was something about that energy of the story being told of Macho that really worked so well with that live crowd that it made a pretty mediocre tournament from a wrestling perspective into one of these iconic WrestleMania moments.
Yeah, it just felt like that, all these guys, it's like, well, they made their debuts or re-debuts or big moment debuts I still want to go see them go to Japan. I mean, I still like. I want to see what it's like when Blake Christian debuts in Korakuen, because the Super J Cup wasn't that, right? It wasn't his debut in any real way, because a lot of that is about the response of the crowd, and he got no response of the crowd because literally no one was there.
Yeah, I think, you and I were both really excited for the Cup. And then it was like, I remember we were texting like the day before where it hit kind of both of us of like, oh, is this just going to feel like a New Japan Strong? Like nothing there. And are they going to still wrestle the same way with like a lot of high flying stuff and like quick reversals and things like that, but without the crowd? And yeah, that's exactly what it was. Like, I would say almost every single match was good.
Yeah, there was something bad. No,
all of the wrestling was good. It's just, especially when you come off that high of Hiromu Despy, and then the next day you're watching this. It's, you just can't touch it.
Yeah, high spots to silence. I'm really ready for I'm really ready for COVID to be over.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, so this is a tape show,
right?
Why did they even do these tag matches in between? They were awful. No one cared. Why is Kozlov on commentary? Rocky Romero did not need to be on that. Rocky Romero would have added a whole lot. Kozlov was awful.
Yeah, Rocky's right there to do commentary.
Right there. And then they also did a little intermission break for cleaning and disinfecting. Like, there were people that actually paid money for this on Fight that don't have New Japan. I don't know why they wouldn't have just gotten a month of New Japan World instead, but it's just weird. All of these things are just vexing by the presentation of it. But I don't know about you, but the final that we get was the final I absolutely would have penciled in.
Yeah.
Which is the ACH and ELP. And again, I hope we already knew from this was another thing that happened at the Best Super Junior final. Hiromu in his post-match promo says, in addition to, I think he says, Ishimori, I'm coming from you, but you're going to have to wait a night until January the 5th. Because I'm going to wrestle whoever wins the tournament in America, whoever wins the Super J Cup. So we know the winner is going to be wrestling Hiromu on January the 4th going into this. I hope they're both going to be there, or that they'll both be there soon. Because honestly, these two guys belong in this junior division, will fit in great, and I want to see both of them having matches in front of crowds.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real, again, while we were a little bit disappointed in the overall show, the performance by Phantasmo just getting weird, having fun out there, weird bits. He had his music turned off because he hasn't sold the rights to New Japan, which was a very funny moment. Just lots of. He was having fun with it and really making his matches different. And I appreciated that. I'm a fan of his. It was great to see him in New Japan. I'm very excited to see him go to the Dome.
And he is just healing at the top of his game, right? I mean, him and Jay White are honestly the reason why the Bullet Club are the dominant heel fashion that they could turn Suzuki-gun. Like, I kind of want ELP to go heavyweight to start teaming with Jay White, just because they could just be glory that you'd love to hate them. And, oh my God, with the Japanese crowd.
Just imagine ELP just straight punching someone in the dick like he does, and that leading to Jay White winning. Just everyone would just be chef's kiss of heeldom.
They could do kind of like the Golden Lovers with the knee. What's that called again?
the Golden Trigger, but it's just a punch.
But they both one goes punch to the back of the balls, one punch to the front of the dick. That could be their finisher. It could be great. But here's the thing, too, going back to the crowd, is I don't know why they didn't just put a couple people around the ring here. Because even like the music thing, I didn't get it at first. I'm texting you live. You'd already seen the show.
Because it's so silent. You're like, well, I guess it's just more silent now.
And then Kevin Kelly explains it, but you're like a minute. Like, if they had just put a couple more people around to react, like, you could have gotten the gag sooner and getting the good healing.
Kevin Kelly literally had to explain the joke. He was like, you see, guys, he won't do this thing, and which means that's why the sound was off. And so it's like, cool. I mean, funny, but again, like the energy level was such that it was hard to tell it was a joke and not just some issue.
And I think in the first explanation, he left off critical information because you're like, okay, well, but I watch New Japan World and this actually happens all the time. Yeah. If they don't play someone's music, they just mute it out. So it's like, then they mention, he's singing his own song or he's doing the audio. Like El Phantasmo made this song himself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, now I fully get the bit, and I like it when he does it the second time, and it's good. But and I think as a result, I think the right guy won, right?
Yeah.
I think Phantasmo against Hiromu, so he's got back-to-back Bullet Club night guys. If he beats ELP, if miraculously ELP beats Hiromu, which I would not wager on, but that's kind of interesting too. Him and Ishimori, two Bullet Club guys. But like you kind of really are. I like that they're really treating that Hiromu's the only other guy other than whoever wins the world title match is the only other guy that's going to be working twice potentially, or I guess ELP. But come on, it's going to be Hiromu.
Yeah.
And it really puts him on that pedestal that like he's just as big a star, or he's as close as anyone has ever been to being as big a star as a heavyweight. He's not the next coming of Kushida. He's the next coming of Liger.
That
Like,
is an interesting comparison.
That's the level of star he's becoming. Or he's become. He's already there.
Yeah, I think. Well, and I think this is maybe meant to be that crowning moment for him. That sort of cements it and really fully locks it in. Of like, this is our guy. And I think, and to me, look, he's had these matches with Ishimori, and they're great, right? The final they had a couple years ago was fantastic. But to me, actually, again, the match I'm more interested in because it hasn't happened is him and Phantasmo to see what he can do. And maybe they blow the roof off. I'm much more excited right now about night one than night two because night one has that, and night one has Ospreay and Okada, which is to me the match I'm looking forward to most on the show right now. The Rainmaker, but I do want to use that to transition into our watch along this week, which is a classic from William Ospreay, the leader of the Empire,
right? The founder, the founding member, founding partner. I don't know what word to use.
And this is one. When you sent this to me, I was like, maybe Fax screwed this up because there's no way this doesn't have English commentary. There's no way that someone didn't go back and do this match. But apparently, no, there is no English commentary for
arguably one of, if not his most famous match, and Ricochet's most famous match. There was really, I think they did one at. There was two Ospreay-Ricochet matches around the same time frame that just kind of exploded in 2016. I think because of this being in the Super J Cup, even though this was the second one, this one I think is the one that really got the world kind of blowing up. And I am flummoxed. So the version, we shared the link. If you look on Facebook, you can click the link, log into New Japan World and watch along with us. There's just no commentary on that one. So just
not a bit.
Yeah, you can just, if you want to hear some wrestling, just ring sound, go for it. Otherwise, we'll walk you through it.
Yep. Will Ospreay and Ricochet, Best of the Super Junior 23, 2016, May 27th. We will count you down. All right. You ready to do this, Fax?
I'm ready. You want to count us down?
All right. 3, 2, 1, play.
And this is Ricochet is maskless here. He's not in Prince Puma or anything. He looks just like WWE Ricochet. But he's actually allowed to do all of his flippy shit.
Have you actually seen Ricochet has one of, I think, the most amazing body transformations. I saw like 2008 Ricochet at some point, and I was like, he looks like a very small child.
Yeah.
He really, I mean, he came along. Obviously, Ricochet is a man who's great shape. But it's just he's one of the truly amazing sort of shifts.
And it's also interesting in this one because at this point you see Ospreay coming out with just that, oh, shucks. I'm just happy to be here, babyface, or whatever the British version of all shucks is. And at this point, Ricochet is the more known commodity, which at this point feels weird to say that about a Japanese crowd and Will Ospreay. And you know, they had some relationship already with Will Ospreay, but I think Ricochet was the guy that had definitely done a lot more in New Japan at this point, not even close.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Ricochet had some classic matches with Ibushi. And Ospreay is still just sort of, the young guy in Chaos.
Yeah. And I think around this point too is when I believe you started hearing in the states. Like I knew more about Will Ospreay than Ricochet. I because again I wasn't really watching New Japan around that time, so I knew the name Ricochet, but I wasn't that familiar with his work. I knew Will Ospreay a lot better at this point. When I heard the buzz about this match, I was like, "Ooh, Will Ospreay! It's probably actually as good as they're saying it is." I don't know about this Ricochet guy though, which again feels ridiculous for me to say in retrospect.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, have you? I actually went back and watched. I was watching a bunch of Rev Pro earlier this year, and watched the first Ospreay Okada match, the match that basically convinced Okada that Ospreay was going to be something special and got him to bring him into New Japan and Chaos. And I got to say, it's really great. Ospreay's still pretty young at that point, but it's great, and you just get that sense of like this is. A story that was going to build, and now here we are, almost 6.5, 7 years later, and they're finally having a big match in the Tokyo Dome, and it's just very exciting because again, those two just have such incredible chemistry with each other. I think that to me is the one chance we have. I think at a full on 5+ star classic at the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, I would agree that I would put my money on that one. Although, again, I'm not going to sleep on either the Hiromu matches or either the heavyweight matches. But I agree. If I had to pick one, it would be that. And Ospreay's obviously had a bit of a body transformation himself since then. Allegedly, he doesn't really work out much. He just started working out a little. And he used to work out not at all, from what he says. But yeah, Great O'Karn got into his ear and he turned on his mentor, Okada. But yeah, on that
actually giving some love to the guy in the PWG shirt. That's a committed man.
Yeah,
because PWG definitely. I mean, it was full shipping. You know what I mean?
Yep. I just wanted to remark on that Okada Ospreay, that first match for Rev Pro, and just generally the kind of recent tradition of big stars from NJPW wrestling in Rev Pro, including a few of them have won the Rev Pro heavyweight title. It does have a little bit of that air of the territorial era, right? Where you get Okada playing like Ric Flair, and Ospreay is kind of the local guy that everybody wants to root for, and they kind of know he's not going to beat the champ, but God darn it, he tries so hard. He's going to put on a good show, and I really like that. Where that's another thing COVID's kind of killed, right? That we don't get to see. And allegedly AEW was going to be doing shows in the UK too. I'd be curious to see how they were going to use some of the local talent in this era after WWE's obviously signed so many people.
I feel like Ricochet taunting with the bicep flexes there. It's like, these pecs really flex, Ospreay. But agreed. Actually, I really liked some of the Rev Pro stuff where it was guys coming in, and even particularly, you watch younger versions of some of these guys who are in New Japan stars now. Young Zack Sabre has a pretty crazy match against Nakamura. Skrull against Tanahashi when Skrull was just sort of becoming a player was interesting.
I feel like the match just kind of started for real. I started to interrupt there, and that's one thing. If you have the audio on, I mean, the crowd really just kind of slowly just loses their shit over the course of 20 minutes for this match, and this is really where it starts building.
And that, of course, that flip there is basically the GIF that set the internet on fire.
Yeah,
and led to Ospreay for real wrestling Vader in Rev Pro later that year.
That's the thing that happened.
That's a thing that happened.
In a match that I'm sure Jim Cornette liked better than this one.
Oh, of course.
And by the way, this too, that the crowd at this point is also like, okay, they're doing a lot of this flippy stuff. I'm into it. These guys are both really good at this. And they just noticed, as I just did, that Red Shoes is the ref. And they're really glad because they know this one's not going to be a count out or a DQ.
You can punch Red Shoes in the face. You can punch his son in the face.
I was going to say, you can punch his son in the face, and that's fine.
You could go back in time, punch baby Shota in the face. Red Shoes not going to DQ you.
No. It's like he missed the day that they did referee orientation for New Japan because he was watching King of the Death Match, and that's just how he's refereed ever since.
The crowd kind of laughed at Ospreay selling there, and then immediately, as they went into the net spot, just lost their mind on that kick. Ooh.
They should do AEW should sign Red Shoes to be John Moxley's personal referee. So that he's like, I don't wrestle hardcore matches or those lights out matches. I'm wrestling straight singles matches, but just Red Shoes is my ref.
Well, I would love, one of my favorite things about Moxley's New Japan run, other than the batshit insane match he had with Suzuki, was his relationship with Shota Umino. I don't know. Actually, don't know where Shota is right now because he was in the UK. I don't know if he's working. If he went back to the Japan and.
No, he's in the States. They talked about it on the Super J show. They actually talked about how he was there in the dojo.
Oh, interesting that he hasn't appeared at all on New Japan Strong then. But
I don't know if he just got there or maybe they were swerving us and he's gonna show up as the next member of the Empire. He's a better wrestler than Great O'Karn, so he can take his spot. This is another match that just shows because this one's in Korakuen, and I believe this is Korakuen. Certainly.
Yes,
like
for sure.
And again, the magic of Korakuen, as it really is one of those like wrestling destinations because it's not that big. And the fact that there's enough people that when they really get going, the crowd is such a big part of the chemistry, the alchemy of this. But it's also small enough that you can still hear those little people being like, Ospreay!
Well, I think the pacing of this match has been super interesting because the crowd is so into it, right? That obviously, the transitions are, not exactly Danny Hodge. But on the other hand, what is true is that they're taking their time here and kind of letting these spots build, and people are just going nuts. Like, it had been a long time since I've seen the full match, and it is really something to see how the crowd is just really losing it for these guys.
Yeah, and they're playing into it. I think that these guys are almost like trying not to smile during this match. They were like, "This is going exactly the way I hoped." Nobody's blowing spots. The crowd is a willing third partner that Red Shoes will never be. It just so works.
Well, I think it's one of the underrated things about Ricochet. As Ricochet matured on the indies, I think he became someone who really could control a crowd. Was underrated at controlling a crowd. Put it that way, right? I don't know if I'd put him up there with the absolute top guys at doing that, but he was pretty good at it.
Yeah, totally agreed. And Ospreay has gotten very, very good at it too. And I'm really intrigued to see a long Ospreay heel run. To see if he keep that crowd energy going now as a heel, let alone as a big time heel. He's not just a heel; he is a big time heel. And I think so, from what I've seen so far. But let's see it in the ring.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he adapts the style. There's the Jay White method of adapting, which is to, again, slow things down so much to heal yourself. And it'll be interesting to see if Ospreay tries to find a different way to keep himself heel, but also sort of maintain the energy of the match.
Yeah, because you don't as much as we just said how much we love Phantasmo, you don't want to see Will Ospreay's finisher be a ball punch,
right,
or a dick punch. You want it to be Stormbreaker. So he's the type of guy you want him to be like Okada when Okada was a heel. You have to respect him. And he is kind of doing the Okada like heel Rainmaker thing. Come to think of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of exactly what he's modeling himself on, which I guess is itself has a steeped tradition in pro wrestling. It's not like the Rainmaker was a totally unique creation.
Well, but also just the idea that he's the young Okada is a perfect story for this match, right?
Yeah.
And their presumably long rivalry that will happen.
Yeah, in fact, again, they've already had, 3 singles matches, including the Rev Pro one? So they've had 2 in New Japan since then?
I think it's more.
Oh, well, I wasn't counting G1, actually. I'm sorry. I was
Right,
just
there's
thinking
the two
Big
G1
Show,
matches. The two G1 matches, and they had
the anniversary show.
an anniversary one. So that's 4, I think.
And then I thought they didn't. I thought they did the anniversary show 2 years in a row.
I'm not sure. I know there's at least one anniversary show match. I don't recall if there's a second.
Yeah. Because that's kind of almost become a tradition now with the world champ going against the junior champ. And it does seem like they're often in the same stable, which kind of makes it interesting.
A kiss from Ospreay. A kiss. I love Ospreay's Sasuke special. It's one of the few moves that my wife has sort of like walked by watching I was watching a wrestling match and went like, what is that? That's pretty cool.
It's interesting here with the Ospreay is like he's so young here. He's still very young, and he's really young here. He's what, like 24 or something like that here, 23. Like, and it's kind of interesting that the Ospreay we're going to see at Wrestle Kingdom going against, like, that's the Ospreay we're going to remember for the rest of our lives, and this is going to be the tiny baby Ospreay, which we've seen the entire arc of Ospreay. This still feels very normal to us. Like, oh, he's smaller than he is now, but I mean, he's Ospreay. This is what he's looked like most of the time, and it's going to be kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll be a little bit like, some of those guys that really matured in WWE into big stars, like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. Like, it's not that weird for me to see like young Bryan and young Punk, but it's weird, right?
It is.
It's something that, it's not going to be, as you said, not part of their legacy. Basketball short CM Punk is not the CM Punk legacy.
And I was going to say Punk, I think, more than Bryan, because Bryan kind of was always Bryan. Like, he looks a lot younger, but he was changing characters all the time. He was always good on the and Punk was always good on the microphone, but kind of a very different characters. And it'll be interesting, Ricochet. Like, we still don't know what is his, like, is he going to be the guy that just goes, whatever happened to Ricochet after this match? Like, oh, he made a ton of money in WWE, but he kind of got boring and nobody cared about him anymore. Or is he going to be able to get out of there? Because, again, he's not too old to not still do a hell of a run. If he came back to New Japan, or if he did something in AAA or AEW, or, hey, the way that things are aligning, all three. The Japanese crowd doing it. This is awesome, chant.
They've all watched their PWG tapes and their ROH tapes. But yeah, Ricochet is a guy that does seem ripe to go back to New Japan and just really cement himself.
Yeah, I mean, particularly if Ospreay as you got to think he already is, and he's going to be, is kind of going to be a guy that's going to be in that upper card world title conversation for years to come. You can plug Ricochet right into a main event match with Ospreay. The people of Japan have not forgotten these two together.
Yeah, you could imagine Ricochet walking out to face up with Champ Ospreay and the crowd just losing their shit. As they are, again, they're right now. I mean, it's interesting because the pacing has continued, right? They're moving through this match, and it's well constructed from a like timing of the spots perspective. Again, I'm not going to suggest that there's like a crazy connection between here, but there is a build to the pace that has been effective, right? I mean, people are losing their minds here and now they're worried about a count out.
It's Red Tuesday, couldn't. And it only gets to 14, and they still give the. Well, and I think the other thing too is, remember, this is Best of the Super Juniors. This isn't a year alternating with World Tag League. This is not the first night, right? Nope. So this is towards the end of the tournament. It's May 27th, so I don't know exactly what day this is, but I'd say that's like day 8 or something like that. It's pretty deep in. Day 10, it's in the second half of the tournament. Maybe closer to the end of the tournament. So that's the other thing, too, that these guys working with slow pace, and I think Ricochet in particular have definitely been working some main events leading up to this. It also makes sense that they'd slow things down.
Really, I mean, if you're watching it on mute, you got to hear a little bit. They're really, you can hear the forearms here. And the crowd, again, the crowd, like, with it. The crowd is really the star of this match.
Well, because you just don't see this at Cork and Hall. Like, this is a PWG crowd. Like, it's insane to me. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to find out there was, 300 American tourists that all came in a bus for this match or something. But it doesn't look like it looking at the crowd. And I can tell you from personal experience, it is not easy as a foreigner to get tickets to a New Japan show. You literally cannot buy tickets outside of the country. So I doubt it.
What a reversal.
Ooh. And I mean, even the Spanish Fly, and you're like, that's the finish. That could be the finish. It's just a Spanish Fly. But the way they've been building this.
I will say, as someone who watched a lot of the SATs, the thing that's happened now where people say that, like, it's like, oh, it's a top rope Spanish Fly. It's like, no, that's a Spanish Fly. You're supposed to do it from the top rope. It's actually a standing Spanish Fly is the kind of crazy thing.
Yeah.
And the idea of, oh, it's a solo Spanish, no, it's a double team Spanish Fly. It's like, again, that's the move.
Right.
That guys have been able to figure out how to do it standing on the ground with one person is pretty wild.
And just going back to Ricochet, because he didn't, he obviously did a good amount of time in New Japan, but I'm not that familiar with too much he did against guys in the heavyweight division. Obviously, Ibushi is at the top of the heavyweight division now, but he
was a junior at the time.
Yeah, I mean, he never got matches against like Naito or Okada that I'm aware of. Like, there's a lot of fresh matchups there. And again, if he came back, he definitely is coming back as a heavyweight, even though his body hasn't changed that much. I mean, again, just look at him here. He's already stretching that he could be a junior at this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think he comes in the way Kenta did, and he's basically immediately a top guy.
Yeah. And he could probably also pull 2 paychecks per show. They don't have the copyright stuff, so he could work as Ricochet and as Prince Puma.
Prince Puma, yeah. Prince Puma is a junior, Ricochet is a heavyweight.
There you go.
You too can buy Lucha Underground's copyrights for 35 cents. They really should sell those all off. Because I feel like some of those, like, can we get Jeff Cobb in, like, Impact as Matanza Cueto?
I've always, so in a lot of wrestling, modern wrestling, they don't really ever enforce the no closed fist, right? It's very loosely enforced. In New Japan, though, it's pretty strict, right? But the thing that...
Whoa!
That's a hell of a finish.
Hell of a finish.
But what I was going to say is that you can't do the closed fist, but you can just hit a guy as hard as you can, open, and you can kick them or knee them in the head as hard as you can, but no closed fist. Yeah, it's been a while.
Gentlemen.
And again, this is really, again, a starting performance for Ospreay. And it makes sense, particularly in retrospect, he goes over here because he's the guy you needed to make. Ricochet wasn't what he is today, and probably wasn't even his status grows exponentially by this match as well. But Ospreay was really going 0 to 60 here. Whereas Ricochet, he came out as half the world junior champions. He won gold. He had done a lot of things. He won a lot of titles. He'd done a lot of huge things. Lucha Underground title. Whereas Ospreay really has no track record outside of Great Britain at this point.
Right. Right.
Ricochet not a fan with how the match ended.
Yeah, I mean, this is Ospreay's first Best of Super Juniors.
One more match. They're down. I mean, this is a PWG shit crowd. Young Jay White in the background. I didn't even recognize this Ospreay music either. Obviously, before his Elevation, not is it Elevation? What was the old song?
I really think if he's just going to go for flair, he should just steal the Space Zarathustra, the Space Odyssey song. Just saying. Why not?
Well, didn't Ospreay? He already came out to his new song.
He did. It sounded fine.
But I'm saying the song that we most know him for.
Right.
That song he was not yet using here. But yeah, hell of a match. You know, and then I was
you weren't watching along with us.
One of the great Meltzer troll jobs of refusing to give 5. Like if you gave 4.5 or you're even 4, and you're like, okay, well, it's just a spot monkey thing. It's weird that Meltzer's rating it this way, but the 4.75 is just trolling, because how can you do that match better than those guys did that match?
I don't think he could. I don't think he can.
Yeah, I don't think he can either. And you know, they're two of the best.
All right, that's a good one. We're looking for good ones at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, and so we're probably taking next week off. You know, don't sign it in blood. We could always change our minds, but not a lot going on in New Japan. Maybe we'll come on and just do a watch along or something. We reserve the right, but the plan is to take next week off, and then we'll be back the week following that with our big Wrestle Kingdom preview extravaganza.
Yeah, we'll cover the Korakuen shows and preview Wrestle Kingdom and get you ready for what's going to be. I'm not the most excited about these shows in terms of the matches. I am incredibly, incredibly excited to watch a Wrestle Kingdom with 20,000 people cheering. I am.
Well, and that's the reason I think I'm more into this than even with how big that Winter is Coming AEW show is. I am into this more than anything in 2020, anything I've been in a long time. And it's because this is a big show that they're effectively building that we know is going to feel like a big show. That Despy fucking match was a big show match, and Wrestle Kingdom is going to be even bigger. I don't know what they're going to do for WrestleMania. I assume the next, Revolution is going to be at fucking Jacksonville again. And yeah, they're doing a better job making that feel good. They're doing better than the New Japan Strong matches and the Super J Cup felt. Much better. I'm enjoying the American wrestling, but there is nothing they can do to convince me that a show that they are putting on is going to be as big and as epic as Wrestle Kingdom is going to be on January the 4th and January the 5th.
It's going to be epic. We'll talk you through it. As always, I've been Chris.
I've been back.
We are the Curtain Jerks.
Adios.